Good afternoon, everyone. And for those of you around the world, good evening and good morning. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here with us today for our webinar about technology, media, and society, how it all connects. We're very pleased as members of the Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute to be partnering with the American Technion Society to bring you this as a great installment in our series of webinars around activities going on in the United States and at the Technion that we hope will be of great interest to you. I'm Ron Brachman. I'm the director of the Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute on the campus of Cornell Tech in New York City. And we're very pleased to be able to tell you today about one of our major activities in the Jacobs Institute. The Jacobs Institute was established a number of years ago, along with Cornell Tech, to do experimentation and research, entrepreneurship and education, to do outreach between academia and industry, and to represent the partnership between Cornell University and the Technion Israel Institute of Technology that led to the establishment of this wonderful institution. Within the Jacobs Institute, our efforts are generally broken into what we call hubs. At the moment, we have 3 different hubs. The very first one was started in the area of media, one of New York City's major industries. It's called the Connective Media Hub, and that will be the focus of our conversation today. Our second hub is in health tech, and our third hub, just very recently established, is in what we're calling urban tech. And we'll look forward to talking to you about those other efforts as we go along. Today, I'm very, very pleased to have with us Professor Mor Naaman, the leader of the Connective Media Hub, and Professor Nicola Dell, one of the key members of our faculty at the Jacobs Institute and at Cornell Tech, and Hana Matatov, who will be joining us as well. I'm sure you're going to enjoy hearing from them. And with that, as I turn this over to Mor, I just wanted to note that we're happy to take your questions at the end of the program. If you could, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to send us your questions. And we'll get to as many of them as possible when Jerry Kleinman from the American Technion Society will join us at the end of the program. Please note also that the program is being recorded and we will share the recording with you in the next few days. So with that, I'm very thrilled to turn the microphone over to Professor Mor Naaman. Thank you, Mor.
Thank you, Ron, and hello, everyone. I am coming to you live from the Cornell Tech campus. This is not a Zoom background. This is the real deal. I am the director of the Connected Media Hub, an academic program. I'm one of the first faculty hired at Jacobs and Cornell Tech, so I've been here since 2013. A little bit about my background. I'm a Stanford computer science graduate, Ph.D. graduate, but I'm now appointed in information science. So I call myself a reformed computer scientist as my focus is on the social and human aspects and implications of technology. I'm also a Technion offspring. My father is an electrical engineering graduate of the Technion, 1971. I'm a former basketball player in Hapoel Tel Aviv in Israel. And I spend significant time not only in academic settings, but also in corporate settings, including last year when I spent a year at Google on my sabbatical, helping them think about issues with their information ecosystem around news. So just briefly, I'm going to describe the vision around the Connected Media program, and then maybe talk a little bit about the research that's done here, including my research. The Connected Media program is rooted in the fact that our lives are increasingly performed through technologies, from Zoom calls like and webinars like the one that we are in right now, to social media having an effect, an immediate effect that's very clear today on how our very democracy functions. Add to that the new devices and environments of technology that are changing how we interact with each other and with our society every day. This becomes a very rich area, an important area to study. So Connected Media is here to understand and help shape this very future. In terms of the academic program, our master's program is geared to trained technologists, mostly people that end up as engineer or product managers and tech companies and beyond, that have a very strong understanding of the human and social aspects of tech, as well as a deep fundamental understanding of the technology itself and what's possible with it. And they take courses that range from machine learning and deep learning, but all the way to courses that focus more on the human, understanding the human aspects of tech, understanding how to find out what the needs of communities and cities, for example, are. So the program has grown through the years. We started with 13 students back in 2014, and now we have over 80 students over this 2-year program. So 80 plus, including first year and 2-year, second year students at Cornell Tech in the Connected Media program alone. This program happens, it's a master's program, so it's applied, but it's also in a very Jacobs and Cornell Tech fashion, is happening in a very engaged way with very practical outcomes. So the students during the years here get to engage with both, get to engage and think about practical outcomes of what they develop, including their interactions with faculty and with practitioners out here just across the river from us in Manhattan and other parts of New York. So this is the master's program. I can tell you more about this later. In terms of research that's done in Connected Media Hub, we really have a strong program of research that can help us understand the technology impact on society, help us design systems that support human and community and societal needs. You'll hear about that from Nikki, who's going to speak next. But just to give you a few other examples, Shiri Eisenkot, one of our hub faculty, is building interactive systems that enhance the perception and ability of people with visual impairments to use the newest technologies like augmented reality. So she builds interfaces in augmented reality that can help support the needs of people with visual impairments that cannot experience the environment like other people might be able to. We have 2 new faculty actually joining us from my alma mater, Stanford, next year, Nikhil Garg and Emma Pearson. Both of them are very strong data scientists that are using data science to advance societal goals. For example, Emma Pearson is studying inequality and health, and she has a very exciting research coming out looking at how to model COVID-related data to understand and guide reopening of businesses in different neighborhoods. And Nikhil is working to advance civic outcomes and decision-making in the context of our democracy using data-driven techniques. So this is coming next year. In my own research, I look at the area that I broadly call tech, media, and democracy. And essentially what me and my group has been looking at is understanding the trustworthiness or lack thereof of our information ecosystem, and in particular in how it affects our democracy and our democratic outcomes. So what does it mean? I'll give you a few examples of the type of projects we engage with. But first I'll notice that just like the rest of the Connected Media Hub, this is very much an information science kind of project. So our methods that we use range from interviews with people, so qualitative methods that borrow from the social scientists, to large-scale data science and data analysis, to developing new technologies, applications, and systems that can help improve outcomes in the information ecosystem. The other thing that I mentioned is a big part of this effort is a cross New York City course and initiative that we have been leading here at Jacobs and Cornell Tech that brings together Columbia, NYU, the New School, and other institutions to think together about this problem, mostly in the context of an academic course, but also beyond. So just a few examples of the type of research done in the group. We've recently looked at political candidates and their activity on Twitter, and in particular, we've studied how different abuse is targeted towards political candidates, who and what types of abuse, in order to be able to offer better protections for these candidates on Twitter. Another research is we looked at YouTube data. This is an ongoing study And we're trying to understand how YouTube shows what kind of content they show to people on the two sides of the political divide, to understand the filter bubble as it exists on YouTube. Another important question for us is local news. We all know the importance of local news in our information environment, but we also know that it has been declining over the last few years. So we want to understand how we can identify and rank valuable local news outlets and help them come up with financial models and information-driven models that can help them survive. One thing that Hana is talking about soon is a project of tracking visual misinformation in our information environment, because that has been, as probably you all know as well, visual misinformation is a key and important aspect of our information environment, but it's very hard to computationally track and understand. So Hana is helping us do that. I'm happy to say more about all of these projects, but we want to leave time for some other people as well. I think the sky is the limit in this kind of research and the impact that it can have on our information environment. We're currently looking to extend our network of support for doing this research. So with that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's doing really exciting research that brings together some of the concepts that I just discussed that are core to this hub. Professor Nicola Dell, she was one of the first faculty hired right out of her PhD to Cornell Tech, so she's one of our bravest faculty as well. She has been in her research and activities a model of impact and engagement in the topics related to the hub. So Nikki, please tell us more.
Great, thank you very much, Mor, for the introduction, and thanks everyone tuning in. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to speak with all of you. As Mor mentioned, my name is Nicola Dell. I'm an assistant professor in the Jacobs Institute at Cornell Tech in New York City. And the goal of my research is really to try and design, build, deploy, and evaluate new computing systems that help marginalized or underserved communities, both in the US and internationally around the world. So just to give you a couple of examples of projects that I'm actively working on. One area of my research focuses on community health programs and how technology can play a role in amplifying the impact of community health workers in rural or low-income settings. And I have work going on in rural India and Kenya, and also in New York City with home health aides. And all of these projects are really trying to integrate new technology tools into these health information workflows to try and improve patient care, to elevate the status of these essential healthcare workers, and to make the overall healthcare system more efficient. Another aspect of my research looks at security and privacy for vulnerable populations. And again, this is in both international locations, mostly in South Asia, and also in New York. For example, projects have focused on cultures where people typically share mobile devices or share their technologies with friends and family, which introduces new security and privacy challenges that most of our systems to date are not well equipped to address. I also have a number of projects looking at how governments are using technology to monitor their citizens and for authoritarian purposes. And then I've also looked at how technology companies internationalize their platforms for different kinds of communities around the world, and how that design could be improved to better serve these diverse populations. And then finally, I do a lot of work also looking at how we conduct research with vulnerable or marginalized communities and ways in which we can improve our process, which includes the best ways to try and work with populations, for example, in deeply patriarchal societies or other situations where our expectations as technology designers might not match well with what populations are experiencing. So this is just a few examples of the kinds of work that I typically get up to. But I want to take the most of the time today to talk to you about one specific project that is a good example of the kind of work we like to do in the Jacobs Institute to engage with society, and in particular, in this case, New York City, which is to study digital safety and security for survivors of intimate partner violence. And I'd like to just make sure that we have a trigger warning here that I will be talking about intimate partner violence, domestic violence, and abuse. So if that's going to be challenging, feel free to step away and take a minute. So intimate partner violence is a really important societal problem. It affects millions of people around the world. I like, in the settings that I typically talk to try and put this in the context of technology users, because it can help you understand quickly how technology is playing a growing and increasingly important role in intimate partner violence. So for example, of all of the Facebook or Android users in the world, we can think of hundreds of millions of people who experience abuse through their technology. The goal of our research group at the Jacobs Institute at Cornell Tech is to both understand and research how technology is being used in the intimate partner violence ecosystem, and then to redesign existing technologies or to design new socio-technical systems that do a better job of improving safety and well-being for survivors. So I'm just going to start with a hypothetical story to contextualize some of the things that I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about Carol. This is not a real story. It's a hypothetical aggregate of many of the stories that we hear, but is very representative of the common case that we hear in our research. So Carol says, I filed for divorce from my husband after years of his abuse. I have an order of protection against him, and our kids are in my custody. I saw a receipt on our credit card statement that he bought M-Spy. I don't know if it's on my phone or not, but he keeps showing up and following me. He got into my laptop somehow. He got my Facebook password, email password, and he shared naked pictures of me. He sent them from his Facebook to my bosses. He locked me out of my Gmail by changing the recovery phone to his. I can't get back in, and now he's using it to message my business contacts. I had to make a new one, which really hurt my career because I lost all my contacts. I tried to change my Facebook password once he shared the pictures, but he got really angry and forced me to tell him what it was and threatened me if I ever tried changing passwords again. So this example shows a lot of the different and complex ways in which technology might play a role in intimate partner violence. We see examples like shared ownership of accounts or devices to install spyware or to monitor usage. We see examples of password or account compromise because somebody knows the password or can guess the password to somebody else's account. We see the sharing of non-consensual intimate images. We see people being locked out of their devices and accounts. We see impersonation of victims used in ways to harm their career or their personal relationships. And then we see threats of escalation to physical abuse or other kinds of abuse. Many of these situations are very complex to deal with. And in our research, we found that most of the infrastructure in the domestic violence and intimate partner violence ecosystem is unfortunately not well equipped to deal with technology abuse. For example, of all of the hundreds of people we spoke to, including caseworkers, lawyers, police, survivors, social workers, the number of people we met who were professional technologists or had a background in computer science was 0. And there were no best practices for thinking about technology risks or evaluating them. We also overwhelmingly heard that survivors do not feel they have enough expertise when it comes to technology to understand and deal with tech abuse, and that abusers are the ones who are generally considered to be more tech savvy or who have often set up the accounts and home technology systems. And then professionals, caseworkers, social workers, and lawyers are overwhelmingly reporting that they too have insufficient understanding of technology to be able to effectively help their clients deal with tech abuse. At the same time, we also found that the technology ecosystems are not well serving survivors. So for example, we heard lots of stories about how people would be hacked and how abusers would hack into phones and accounts. And this might conjure images of a hacker doing very complicated technical attacks, which when we delved deeper into the situation, we found was really not the case at all. Instead, the attacks are not often technically sophisticated, but they exploit vulnerabilities in technical systems that do not match the threat model of an intimate partner. So for example, most of our security systems that are based on mechanisms like usernames and passwords bank on the fact that the attacker is not personally known to the victim and usually connecting from a different location than where the victim lives, which is not the case in intimate partner violence, where the attacker is an intimate partner who's often connecting from the same house and the same account as the user of that particular device. In addition, the obvious solutions that you might think of, like to shut off contact with the abuser, to simply buy a new phone, or to not use social media, also don't work, because the context of intimate partner violence means that survivors are often legally required to maintain contact for things like shared custody of children, or that the abusers are the ones financially in control of the accounts. And survivors need access to social media and other platforms to get essential social support and help them deal with the situation. So the question we then arrived at in our research was, how can we help Carol and survivors like her to navigate their situations? We have a lot of projects going on in the technical space to try and improve on our current systems. We're building tools to detect spyware. We have a custom spyware detection system that we have deployed in New York. We're also working on a lot of projects to understand account compromise and so on. And all of these technical projects are very important, but they're not going to be enough. We need complementary socio-technical approaches. Technology is not going to solve this problem. And so at Cornell Tech, we've been developing a new approach that we call clinical computer security, in which we are arranging for a trained technology consultant, somebody with a background in computer science and technology, to meet one-on-one with survivors and provide them with specialized assistance with technology abuse. We've generated a model in which clients within the New York City system who go to family justice centers in New York City for help with intimate partner violence are referred to us by their case manager or lawyer. And then they set up an appointment with our tech consultants who meet with them and who have a 3-tier model to understand via a guided interview what the survivor is experiencing and what their chief concerns are, to investigate via programmatic tools and manual checkups of their privacy, account privacy and security, and then to advise them by discussing options for how they might solve some of their technology abuse problems in ways that are safe and that, again, include their case manager or social worker who can conduct essential safety planning before any changes are made to try and minimize the chances that changes could lead to escalation of abuse. We've now been running this clinical computer security model in New York City via our Clinic to End Tech Abuse, or CETA, which we have created now as a nonprofit. So far, we've helped over 200 survivors of intimate partner violence through our tech consultations in close partnership with the New York City Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. In addition to meeting with clients face-to-face, we've also developed a program where we provide free trainings for non-technology support professionals, so caseworkers, social workers, and lawyers, where they can learn from us about tech abuse that their clients might experience and have access to free resources for survivors. And we've also been playing an active role in advising a variety of tech companies about the safety of their products and trying to make sure that technologies are designed in a way that better takes into account this new threat model that has not yet been accounted for in the design of many of our technologies. So we're still actively offering consultations today. We've had some changes due to COVID, but we've managed to navigate those. I have the link to our clinic on this slide, the Clinic to End Tech Abuse. And we're actively looking for ways to support it and make it sustainable as a nonprofit moving forward. So with that, thank you for your attention. It's wonderful to talk to everybody. I'd now like to hand over to Hana Matatov, who is a PhD candidate, and I will stop sharing. Hana, over to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, everyone. So as Nikki mentioned, I'm Hana Matatov. I'm a PhD candidate at the Technion. I've started to study at the Technion 7 years ago, BSc in Industrial Engineering and Management, along with BA in Economics. I enjoyed the studies and the opportunity to acquire a great education. And particularly, I was curious about data science and machine learning, so I wanted to learn more about it. And therefore, I started directly an MSc at the Technion, and I started to work with Dr. Amir as my advisor. During the first year, I heard about the Jacobs Institute summer internship program and the opportunity to work with brilliant researchers. It's such a known and recommended institute. Together with the idea to spend the summer at New York City, encouraged me to apply. So after a few interviews, to my delight, Dr. Mor Naaman invited me to join as summer research intern in his lab. And during the summer, I had a really interesting and exciting experience there, and I've learned a lot. And we did a project that was focused mainly on visual misinformation, which I will explain next what it means. And then when I went back to Israel, Mor joined as my second advisor, and I have the honor to be guided by both Dr. Afra and Dr. Mor. And so as I mentioned before, the main subject of the research is visual misinformation. And so let's talk a little about this. So misinformation, particularly in the context of news, is a critical problem for our society. Most of you probably heard the name fake news. So visual misinformation is a significant part of this phenomena, and it's even more challenging because of the convincing power of images. So when we're talking about visual misinformation, we refer to several types. For example, manipulated images, what we can call photoshopped images, or the usage of incorrect captions to real images, or using images in a misleading context. So our research aims to explore, understand, and develop tools to address this visual misinformation and study its spread on social media in particular. This is not a trivial task because the solution should be robust to different types of manipulations. Part of them are very challenging and may be adversarial to avoid the detection of this manipulated versions. Also, the process takes computational tools and an expensive setup because it needs to be done from a large scale data set and in a real-time process, for example, in breaking news events. Therefore, we started to build this social media data set by collecting images from social media. Then we implemented several computer vision algorithms to extract visual features of these images, and design a process that can find for each query image its most visually similar results from the social media data set that we created. This way, we could design a system for journalists to contend visual misinformation and verify the images before posting them, and avoid the spread of fake news, visual fake news actually. Another project that we are working now is creating a dashboard for tracking visual content during the United States elections. For example, we're tracking misinformation regarding claims about voter fraud by tracking the origins of such images on online forums that are known to spread conspiracy theories. So this is the current project. And next, I want to continue develop useful algorithms and systems and provide analysis that can help our society address these challenges. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hana. Thanks, Nikki, for the summary of research projects. So I think you've all seen now different examples of how research in the Connected Media program uses technology to support positive social and human outcomes. The social technical approach, as Nikki called it, is core to what we do here at the Hub in Jacobs in general. So that means understanding and co-developing and understanding the human community needs of tech. There are more examples we can share, of course, and talk about the research. But I see there are already questions in the Q&A, so we can go back to what you want to know. So please use the Q&A function to ask questions, and I'd like to invite the ATS's own Jerry Kleinman to lead the Q&A session.
Thank you, Mor. Am I on the screen? Good, good. That was very interesting. I'm getting text, emails, chat rooms, and all sorts of information, questions, and exclamation marks. That was very well done. An opening question, because I was privileged to be around at the beginning, even when there was a competition for the campus. You were among the first, maybe the second. I don't know the number, faculty member to be hired. And Connected Media was the first hub to open up. So what was your journey to come to start a new institution? And as the Connected Media program changed from what you envisioned about 8 years or so ago when you started it?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jerry. My journey, I guess, was simple. I was approached by the director then of the Jacobs Institute, Craig Gottsman, the first director, and he asked me if I would consider joining the Cornell Tech and the Institute. And that was, to me, an opportunity to start something new, literally from scratch, with the Cornell and Technion brand and name and recognition and reputation, and in the heart of New York City. So really, what's not to like, and especially with my personal affinity to the Technion, it was a no-brainer. The program has changed a lot. When we started, somebody, it was before me, but somebody at I think the Technion or at Cornell came up with this term connective media that nobody has used before, and but it was my mission to say what it means. So luckily we could define it because it was our own. And I think the changes, it's very much like a startup. So what happened over the years is we iterated, we made it better and better. We added, we changed it, here and there in the corner, but mostly we added new faculty. We have a collection of amazing courses that the student can now take at Cornell Tech. And we made, I think, the program a lot more deep and a lot more unique in a sense. So very few programs out there that balance tech and human social aspect and impact, like we do in the Connected Media program now. And we have, I think, been doing it better and better since the beginning.
Excellent. So there's a question here for Professor Dell, and I'm going to read it directly so I don't mess it up. Isn't there some way to get the providers of the tools being abused to step up in designing ways to minimize the abuse, or even deal with escalated problems from CETA or other sources? Seems like there should be a product liability theory that they could be held accountable for unless they take steps to mitigate abuse of their products. Excuse me.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I see that was from David. That's an excellent question. And I think there are a couple of different layers to a response. One is that definitely the technology companies so far have done an excellent job of avoiding being held liable for misinformation or abuse or other things that happen on their platforms. There is some work underway, and we are contributing to various advocacy efforts to try and hold companies responsible in various ways when their platforms are used for certain things, but it's definitely not an easy task to do right now. So most of the time we're appealing either to things like negative publicity, where if there's a news article that would have an expose on how a particular tool or product is playing a role in abuse, then they're incentivized to do something about it. At the same time, many of these scenarios are extremely complicated. So while you might be able to do things like detect non-consensual intimate images, and indeed there has been work done in a variety of methods to do this, for a lot of the kinds of compromises we see, it's hard to tell the difference between an abusive user and the regular technology user. So for things like account compromise or sending of emails, impersonation, and so on, locking people out of accounts, if the abuser has all of the information necessary to verify and authenticate into that account, it can be very hard for the technology companies to mitigate that in a lot of ways. And then the last thing I'll say is that we do, though, work with technology companies. We have active partnerships with Google, with Norton LifeLock, to try and improve their products and to design their products in ways that better account for these threat models from the start. And usually they are very receptive to trying to improve their products when we go to them with information that we found. So, it's a complicated space, but we're definitely working with them, and I think they are trying to improve their products. But something like legal liability might help in that regard as well.
Thank you. Hannah, I have several questions. I'm going to try to combine them perhaps into one. Can you please talk a bit about deep fake videos and what is being done to detect them? And how is this information being transmitted to the government on a timely basis? Or is it being transmitted to the government?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll try to answer, but I guess that Mor can help with several questions. It's my second advisor. So actually, deepfakes are a certain type of visual misinformation, and it's actually one of the hardest. And there are several computer vision tools to determine whether a video was created by this technology or it's a real video. But in this context of my research, of our research, we don't try to classify whether an image or video is fake or real, but rather we show the users the most visually similar results. And in this way, they can understand that probably the same story was already published and maybe in a different context or several years ago even, and things like that. So it's a little different task to classify whether it's true or fake, or to finding the most visually similar results. So this was regarding the first part. And then the second one with the government. So actually the dashboard we're working about, it's, I think the launch day is really close, maybe today, tomorrow, but we don't have a, as far as I know, maybe more can say something more accurate, but as far as I know, we don't have a direct path to government, but we will make it publish online, and whoever want to track visual items on social media can see which images were posted on Twitter by political candidates or by anonymous people that use the hashtags related to voter fraud, and then see the most visually similar results from Reddit conspiracy forums.
Yeah, let me add just a little bit of high level here that connects also to the question about identifying fraud in online communication today. And the working hypothesis that we have for this project is that the AI or machine learning, whatever you want to call it, is going to be good enough to fool people. And there's no, there are going to be kind of a feedback loop of algorithms that get better in creating this fake content, and algorithms that try to detect it, and then the algorithms that generate it will get better. Our steady state, as I see it, is that we will have content that a human will not be able to tell if it was Photoshop or faked or created by algorithmic agents or whatever. So instead, our approach here, instead of saying this is fake, this is not, reasoning about our approach is to reason about the content based on where it originated and how do we feel about the credibility and trustworthiness of the places where the content was first posted. Of course, that doesn't mean also doesn't mean that the content is false or Photoshop or whatever, but it can help people who evaluate the content think about it in a different and with a full context, and not just by seeing the image itself. So that's kind of the core proposition of Hana's work and the dashboard that we're putting together right now. If I can use another minute, Jerry, this is a segue to a research project that I haven't mentioned so far. And in fact, we're just finishing this week. So you're the first to learn about, perhaps, is to look at when people think, we're looking at text now, not images, but it's a similar idea. We have AI that is capable of generating human-looking text. And the goal of this project is not necessarily to say which text was generated by AI or not, because as I said, that would be a very difficult task, but instead to understand when people think a text was generated by AI or not. So kind of giving some more context of what might mislead us in online forum. So again, the bottom line in all of this is that I think the machine learning and AI will be good enough to produce content that can fool us. And the important thing is to understand how people evaluate it and how we can help them do a better job evaluating that content. Jerry, on mute. We went 45 minutes in the Zoom call without saying it.
So you just answered several questions, including many from people who wanted to know, is there any way for people to really be able to detect text or images? And you're saying that we're moving towards a place where they won't be able to detect. But someone else said, well, then is there a realistic chance of government regulating the platform and the accountability of the platform? How can this be regulated?
Yeah, so we have people, like at Cornell Tech, including James Grimmelman, who's law faculty, and Helen Nissenbaum, who leads our Digital Life initiative, and others who are thinking about legal and policy implications. And we are as well. I think there is a future, and that was partly a set of ideas that I tried to popularize at Google when I was there last year, which stops looking at individual content items, the level of individual content items and whether they're false or correct, but instead provides a better opportunity for us to amplify the trustworthy players and people who have a record of trust and trustworthiness. I think the pitch is too long for me to get into it right now, but I think our only chance is for these platforms to change the dynamics of the system to, for example, incentivize trustworthiness, incentivize non-partisanship, or instead of today where we have feeds and algorithms that do the opposite, that give more views, more attention to content that is more partisan and is more attention-seeking.
For Nikki, 2 questions about CETA, C-E-T-A. Questions about how it works at the community level and if it can be replicable in other parts of the world, and are there plans to take it elsewhere?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the questions. To the first one, so we have developed it in a way that we are very tightly integrated with the nonprofit and other survivor support ecosystem in New York City, recognizing that we might have a lot of expertise and information about the technology abuse side of things, but we are not experts on the legal or social work side of things. And so we collaborate very closely with nonprofits, with the New York City Mayor's Office to End Gender-Based Violence, and so on. We operate in New York City within a network of centers called the Family Justice Centers, which are kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of services. 23 different organizations, I believe, operate out of the Family Justice Centers. And so we really are one node, the technology node, if you will, within a much broader, holistic set of services that are provided for survivors. And we're the only ones, as far as we know, who provide that technology expertise. But definitely, especially within such a sensitive context, it's very important to make sure that we're tightly integrated with people who have expertise in the other disciplines needed to support survivors. To the second point, we are absolutely thinking about deploying in other areas. We have already worked with several other organizations, one in Seattle and one in France, actually, who are using our resources. We also, because all of our resources are freely available on the CETA website, they are being used in ways that we don't necessarily know about, and that we'll often kind of come across an organization who is using our tools. We would like to do more research in terms of developing our own replication of CETA, for example, in maybe a rural area or another geographic location. But we're also still a very small research-led group. And so we need more resources and support to be able to scale up as we would like. And that's kind of the phase we're in right now.
Thank you. Mor, picking up on your comment of your sabbatical and having worked at Google for the last year, was a comment about the social media companies and the industry. And do they have the will? They probably have the technology, but do they have the will to stop or slow down this manipulation of information and images?
Okay, we're going into personal opinion land. I'm not representing those companies, so I'll say what my impressions are. That they have the will. They don't always have the understanding or the braveness that is required to address some of these challenges. And also, they don't also always have the right guidelines to do that. So I think the way we can help them is, as academics, is to provide them with new ideas of how to think about this. This is a very tough area, right? So we're balancing here free speech and freedom of expression with the ability of technical platforms to detect and act on such content. So it's not obvious what are desirable solution in any of those cases. So I think for us, both providing new solutions and new approaches on what can be done, but also providing ideas of how that can be done in, for example, fair and equitable manner is important. So I think they do want to act, but again, limited for political reasons, for other reasons, technical reasons, in what they can do, and sometimes limited by the set of ideas and concepts that they already have.
All right. Hana, the question for you has to do with your background. And if I heard it correctly, it was industrial engineering and management. And I forget what your first degree was in. And then you moving into this area. How has the interaction been with the Jacobs Institute and fitting in with your activities on the Technion campus, because you're a PhD student? And so they were curious how all that fit together strategically to be getting a degree, I believe, from the Technion, but doing your work in collaboration with the Jacobs. Is that where you're at?
Yes, so actually I'm a student at the Technion officially, and my BSc was here, and then the direct PhD track is here, and my experience with the Jacobs Institute was during the summer internship 2 years ago. And then I started to collaborate with Professor Mor Naaman. And since then, we are working on the visual misinformation project together, and he's my second advisor. So the Technion knows that it's written in all official documents, but my PhD will be from the Technion. So I hope I answered the details of the question, all details.
If I can add one thing that you may know, I should have mentioned, that our master's students here at the Jacobs Institute of Connected Media and the other programs all get the dual degree. They get a degree from the Technion and they get a degree from Cornell Tech. Hana, I think, is going to be unique in that she's going to be the first Technion PhD grad that is co-advised by a Jacobs Cornell faculty. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, this is the case. I'm not sure if I'm the first, but if you know better.
I think it will be. We had a master's student graduate at the Technion co-advised, but you'll be the first people, I believe. And then the third part is the industrial engineering and management faculty at school and the Technion. We found was perhaps the closest in interest to the Jacobs Institute from all the other departments. So especially because they have a very broad focus, just like our information science department here, a broad focus on how technology, including data science, but also including other technological tools, impacts our society and life. So we work, quite a few of us work with different faculty in that department in Israel.
Yes, definitely. Our faculty has like many courses and professors in the areas of data science, big data, NLP, and human-computer interaction, and many related subjects.
So Mor, back to you for a second. You're talking about the students. Where do the students come from who begin the master's program, and where do they gravitate to? What kind of careers are they into?
Yeah, so they come from all over the world, including the US, but also China, India, Europe, other countries. Most of them come with technical degrees, but not all of them. We do allow students or admit students that have different background, unusual backgrounds. We had students with BA in history come in, as long as they've demonstrated, sometimes we ask them to take a few core courses before they come to the program. But what I find is that most of our students, and especially the best master's students that we have, come with not just an idea of we want to do more computer science, but we want to apply our computer science idea in a societal context. And most of them have also done something other than CS before they come here, or at least the best students have. And accordingly, they end up in many different companies and roles, but including the big platforms like Facebook and Google and Amazon, including startups, and they do software engineering roles, product roles. Increasingly, although not substantially yet, we have people who take design and user experience roles. And so these are the different types of things that they may end up doing. Some nonprofits, recently we had students go to nonprofits as well. So, and I'd like, the part that I really enjoy is that the students, for example, that have taken Nikki's class or have taken my Technion and Democracy class, go ahead and work for those platforms like Facebook and Google, where they can really impact the lives of billions of people and do that with the type of education that they got here.
So thank you. So we have one last question before I turn it over to Ron to wrap it up, and that has to do with your availability to be a power forward for the Knicks. Their talent is depleted, and I know how tall you are, so someone wanted to know what your availability was.
I was going to say that not even I can help the Knicks.
That's well put. Well put. Thank you all, and I really appreciate it. This was very interesting, and I'm going to turn it over to Ron Brachman to help wrap it up.
Thank you, Jerry. And thanks to all of you, Mor, Nikki, Hana, thank you so much for your time with us today. It was enlightening and exciting and very provocative and interesting. Jerry, thanks to you and all of our colleagues at ATS for putting together the program. And we wanted to thank all of you out there for joining us today. I hope you found it informative. I have to say, this program was a perfect representation of what we try to do in the Jacobs Institute. And it's really exemplary of the relationship we're building and continue to grow between Cornell University and the Technion. As Mor said it beautifully, we have a focus on the co-development of technology and human needs. And that's really what characterizes all of our work at the Jacobs Institute and Cornell Tech more broadly, and something we think that we bring that's unique to New York and to the world. So with that, I just wanted to mention that you will soon receive an invitation to future Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute programs, as well as others from the American Technion Society. We will send you a link, or the link will be available to the recording in case you wanted to rehear some of this or you missed part of it. And we want to thank all of you for your great interest. Please stay safe. And thank you so much for your support for this really exciting and novel venture between Cornell and the Technion. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.